Have you ever stood in front of a full room of teens and it's absolutely crickets? Or maybe even worse, you can't get a word in because they've kind of taken over the space and you can't get them back to focus on what you're supposed to focus on? I have been there, and don't worry, I have some strategies to manage that. My name is Kaylee Cornelison. I'm a licensed clinical social worker with over 15 years of experience helping parents and professionals show up better for the teens who need them the most. I lead workshops, create resources, and write the Both and newsletter, a trusted resource for parents and professionals who want to embrace both the challenges and the joys of the teen years. I am back today with 4 more simple strategies for engaging adolescents. If you haven't seen part 1 on setting the stage, I encourage you to go back and watch that because that's really where all the rest of this can start. So once you've hopefully set the stage with a few of those strategies, I want to talk about increasing engagement, how to deal with it when it's crickets or maybe things are starting to get a little bit out of hand. So first and foremost, I think a lot of folks who work with teens know this and know to do this, but sometimes when we get into the day-to-day of teaching or facilitating or doing whatever it is that we're trying to do with the group of young people that we have, we forget to vary the ways that we engage with them. So for example, I have a whole classroom or a whole group full of young people. I want to offer a large group opportunity, maybe a small group opportunity, maybe a pair opportunity. One of my favorites, of course, is a think, pair, share, where you're having young people think about a prompt or response. They pair up with someone else in the room, and then they share out to the larger group. So you're kind of getting 3 different types of engagement all in one strategy. Definitely don't sleep on individual reflection or opportunities that actually don't require any talking at all. So that might be journaling and writing, that might be doing something artistic. But some of my favorites are things that include some sort of physical cue for you to know what they're thinking or feeling. So one of my very favorites is stand on this side of the room if you agree, stand on that side of the room if you disagree, and stand in the middle if you are kind of neutral or somewhere in between. And then we're asking each of those groups, a few people, why. So you can do that with any type of prompt. It can be yes, no, it could be pizza or cheeseburgers, whatever it is. Sometimes I've used it as an icebreaker where we're just giving our opinions on things, all the way to using it as an activity for young people to think about what types of behaviors and relationships are healthy, unhealthy, or abusive. So you can really put any prompt in there. Similar with a thumbs up, thumbs to the side, thumbs down. That's great if young people maybe have some mobility issues, or if you just are in a really small space and like getting up and moving around isn't logistically possible. You have desks in the way or some other things. And then another one is holding up a hand to vote. So 1 to 5. That's another one that you can kind of give any type of prompt, assign a category to each of the different numbers, and get them to share their opinion that way. So that's a really great one that doesn't require any talking, especially if you have a group that is totally crickets and silent. That's a great way to get them engaged. Similarly, the second strategy is to get comfy with silence. One mistake that I see a lot of folks make, and I think a lot of folks who are maybe newer to working with groups of teens, so maybe teens aren't really like your usual population that you're with, or you've changed grade levels and you used to work with elementary, now you're with the high schoolers. It can kind of bring up some nerves sometimes, and a lot of us like to fill empty space with more talking. So we might ask a question and then immediately give it like 2 seconds and then start answering our own question or asking a different question. We need to give time and space for folks to think about their responses, right? We know what question we're going to ask. We've probably thought about it. We've planned for it. They've never heard the question before. So we really have to give them an opportunity to think, to formulate an answer, to get up the guts to say something or raise their hand. And that often takes a lot longer than we think it does. especially if you're in a virtual setting. So if you're in a virtual setting, wait even longer than you think you need to. I really like to take a breath. Maybe I check my notes, I get a drink of water, I sip my coffee, whatever little physical things that I need to do to manage those little feelings of anxiety with silence. I do those things while I'm waiting for folks to respond. So getting comfy with silence, giving them some time. Usually other people don't like having silence either. So they're gonna eventually respond to your question or your prompt. The next strategy that I would suggest is being genuinely curious about teen culture. I think that there are times when as adults we want to dismiss whatever silly TikTok trend is happening or what TV show they're all watching or some song that's, been really popular at any given time. And I've seen folks, when young people try to bring those kind of references into conversations, dismiss them or tell them that that's not relevant. And I think a really nice and simple way to build rapport, but also get a peek into young people's lives and what they're thinking and feeling is to getting genuinely curious about those references. So are they saying something that in a roundabout way they're connecting back to the content or the material or the activity that you're doing? Listen to them, incorporate that, ask them to help you understand how that's relevant to what you're talking about. And you don't actually need to know the reference. A lot of us don't. We don't really keep up with as quickly as teen culture changes. But you could just simply say, tell me what you mean by that. Tell me how that relates to what we're talking about today. And don't do it in a sarcastic way. I've heard people say, well, tell me how that relates. No, we want it to be genuine. How does that relate to what we're talking about today? Tell me more. Where's the connection that you made with that? I think that's a really nice way to get them engaged and make it more interesting for everyone. So we don't have to know what references they're talking about. We also don't need to know slang or phrases or references. Oftentimes when adults try to use slang or little phrases that are in, teen pop culture in the moment, one, we look like we're trying too hard. And usually teens are like, oh my God, please stop. Second of all, there's a big risk that we're going to misuse the slang or the phrase in a way that totally falls flat, or worse, can be harmful or offensive or discriminatory. So I would avoid using slang unless you know for sure, you know what it means. But I don't think we need to do that to be able to engage with and connect with young people. I think being yourself, if you are kind of dorky, if you are sporty, if you are intellectual, if you're really into music, whatever that thing is that you connect with, bringing that into the space with young people goes a long way. Authenticity really goes a long way, even if your interests aren't the same, even if we think that they can't relate or connect to it. I think it goes a long way with showing up in a real human way and making that connection. And when we have that connection, young people are more likely to be engaged with whatever the thing is that we're talking about. And then finally, the fourth strategy is a simple one, but one that often gets skipped, which is incorporating a closing reflection. Now, I know a lot of times in school-based settings, we might have our exit ticket similar to that, but for other groups or even at school, maybe even before an exit ticket for folks, I like to ask, what's one thing you learned today? What's something that surprised you? What's one emotion that came up? What's one word to describe your experience? And I think that serves a couple of different purposes. One is getting young people to reflect and that sort of solidify some of the learning that they may have done. And the other thing that it does is tells us as the facilitator or the educator, what was it that they picked up on? What maybe did they miss? And if the group was kind of acting wild or were really quiet and you're not sure if you got through to them at all, you're going to hear in that moment, usually something got through. They took something away, something was interesting, an emotion was felt, whatever that thing is. So don't skip the closing reflection. You can even incorporate some of those thumbs up, thumbs to the side, thumbs down types of things if it needs to be even quicker than an open-ended reflection question. So those were really quick, but I think that those 4 strategies, so getting comfortable with silence, using multiple strategies for engagement, getting curious about teen culture, and incorporating a closing reflection, can really get young people engaged and help you communicate whatever it is that you're trying to communicate, whether you're a coach, a teacher, a group facilitator, or whatever your role is with young people. I think that these can be helpful.